Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to ace GMAT reading comprehension. My name is Rajat Sadana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your co-host today. With me, I have Payal Tandon, who's the other co-founder of e-GMAT, and she's going to be a main host today. Supporting us in this webinar, we also have Sandeep, who's a GMAT strategy expert, and he is also going to be your co-host today. The purpose of this webinar is to guide you on how to score in the 90th percentile in GMAT reading comprehension. In this webinar, Payal talks about key reading strategies that can help improve your comprehension, and then she's going to demonstrate once you improve your comprehension, getting to the right answer in GMAT RC becomes fairly easy. So overall, it's a very application-focused webinar. It's a very process-focused webinar. And the goal of this webinar is to guide you along the application process or methods, whatever you may call it, and to make sure that you have some sort of a foundation in GMAT reading comprehension. We did send 2 video lessons your way. They were in main point 1 and 2. These video lessons had a few RC passages. They outlined how do you approach the main point of the passage. They did outline at a high level how do you go about reading these passages as well. If you have not gone through these lessons, they are a part of your free trial. Please make sure you go through them. We also have some upcoming free webinars. We have a quant workshop tomorrow. For those of you who want, a personalized quant study plan, who want to understand where you stand today, and then which areas should you need to focus on to get to your target quant score, and you must attend this. Think of it as a proctored mock test that provides a lot more insights than what a typical mock test would do. We'll also do some sort of causality analysis and guide you as to not just where you're faltering, but why you're faltering as well. Then next Saturday, we have a webinar on how to pre-think in GMAT critical reasoning. We'll focus more specifically on assumption questions. This webinar lays the foundation for pre-thinking, and then we extend the same foundation from assumption to evaluate, strengthen, weaken, and even to boldface questions. Again, both of these webinars are very popular. You can click on register now button to register for these webinars. One other question that I have is, when do you plan to take the test? If you've not responded to this one, please do so. Okay, let me also put in my put in another poll question. Just hold on one second. Not this one. Yep. All right. Based on the data that I have so far, and I have data of about 146 students, what I see is that about half the class plans to take the test in a couple of weeks to a month and 45 days. The other half either plans to take the test right away, which is about 14 point, which is in the next couple of in the next 10 days or so, and about 33% of you have more than 46 days before the test. With that, let me go right into the webinar pane. So what you see over here is a presentation pod, which and a Q&A pod below this. The presentation pod should say, how do you ace GMAT reading comprehension? Okay. Over the next 3 to 4 minutes, I'm going to talk a bit about the importance of ACE getting to that 90th percentile on GMAT RC, and then I'll have Payal take over. So with that, let's get some more insights about you guys. What is your target GMAT score? If you can put in a response over here. Let me stop broadcast results so that your responses are not influenced by what others put in. So the question is, what is your target GMAT score? Let's get in a few more responses here. I have about 101 responses as of now out of 148 people in the session. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll, broadcast results. So what you see over here is about 41% of you are aiming for that score of 730 to 750, about 13% of you in the 760 or higher, about 21% of you are in the 710, 720 bracket, and then about 23% of you are in the 660 to 700 bracket. Now, tell me one thing. In today's world, why should you aim for a score of 730 or higher? What's the value of that score of 730 or higher? And again, if this doesn't apply to you, that's okay. The strategies that we talk about would still apply to you. Okay, but why should you aim for that score? And if you're saying return on investment, what is that ROI of that score of 730 over that score of 700? Okay, I have 21, 22 responses. So if you're putting in the response and entering I'm still getting that response, even though you don't see a response being submitted, but at my end, I'm receiving it, so don't worry about it. I have 32 responses as of now. Okay, let's get a few more responses. 34, 36. Let's get to 40, and then I'm going to broadcast results. 40, all right. To be eligible to get into a top college, easy to join top business schools, scholarships, to be more competitive. If you're an Indian, you need that score of 700 or higher. Okay, all really good for better ROI. All really good reasons. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just present briefly present, not in detail, 3 reasons why you should aim for it. And those 3 reasons should cover what you've said, but in a bit more quantifiable form. Okay, so the first reasons why you should aim to get a score of 730 or higher is if you want to study at a top B schools, they require that score of 730. So one of the very interesting trends that we've been observing since 2014 is that the median GMAT scores at top B schools have gone up over the last 5 years. And if you look at schools such as Columbia, Stern, GSB Chicago, Kellogg, median scores over there used to be around that 710, 712 mark. Now they're closer to that 730 mark. Schools such as Stanford and Harvard always had high median scores, but now many of the top 15 schools, their median scores touch that 730 mark or so. In fact, over the last 5 years, for 23 out of top 25 schools, median GMAT scores have gone up considerably. Okay, for the 24th school, actually the score has remained the same. The 25th school, which already had a high median GMAT score, that score dipped by about 5 points. The other piece which is there is in the year 2018, B schools offered record scholarships, and we expect that trend to continue in the year 2019. And based on our estimates, in e-GMATers do get about $18 million worth of scholarships every year. Half of that scholarship money, so the $350 million that US B schools offer, and then another 50 odd million that European B schools offer. So half of that kitty is likely to go to people who get to a score of 730 or higher. So if you think about it, 6,000 people get to 6,000 out of 200,000 people get to that score of 730 or higher, and these 6,000 people take in half the scholarship money. Can anyone estimate what's the average scholarship that a Harvard Business School student gets? Okay. All right, I have 10 responses. Average scholarship, someone said 50 crores, that's about 6 million or so, 7 million or so. Okay, good answers. So the average Harvard HBS student gets an scholarship of an average scholarship amount of about $40,000 to $45,000 per year. So over 2 years, you're talking about $90,000 worth of scholarship. That's just the median scholarship amount. There are many students who get a full ride. The students who are very well off, they don't get the scholarship, but on an average, that's what the median scholarship amount is. Stanford is slightly lower than that. And again, your scholarship amount that you get depends on two things. One's your GMAT score. The second is how much they like you during that interview. So GMAT score becomes really, really important. And the third reason, and perhaps the most ignored reason, is that when you compare the total earnings of a student who graduates from a top school versus one who graduates from a school rank, 25, 30 or higher, the difference in earnings over a 10-year period, it's the highest that has ever been in the history of MBA education, and it easily could topple $500,000. How many of you have read the news that salaries of Stern graduates were record high? And this was something which was recently published about a week back or so. MBA starting salaries from these schools are record high today, and then they've never been this high. And the delta between what you get when you graduate from a top business school versus what you get when you graduate from a tier 2 school is the highest that it has ever been. So if you're looking for details on other B schools, just go to our blog and search e-GMAT plus the B school name. You're going to get all the details of pretty much any top B school, including Rotman. What's the Harvard scholarship? So Harvard has about $37 million worth of scholarship kitty, and if you divide that with the number of students who study over there, you'd get that median scholarship amount. So one last question before I move. Parav says, are you also considering salaries of CEOs such as Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella? No, these are students who graduate right out of HBS. These are not alumni. Okay. Now with that, I'm going to now pass the controls to Payal, and she's going to talk about why you should get to that high RC ability to get that 7.
All right, thank you, Rajat, for that wonderful introduction, and welcome everyone to Reading Comprehension webinar. Let's do a quick voice check. Can you all hear me clearly? All right, sounds good. So let me just set up my pods here so that all right. All right, so what should be a target RC ability if you want to score 730 plus? You should always aim for 90 percentile ability if your target score is 730 plus. Okay, that's what your target ability should be. And now the question is, how do you get to that 90 percentile ability? And for that, we need to first understand what is your approach today, so that we can understand what is it that you're doing today and what needs to be fixed in order for you to get to that target ability of 90th percentile. So tell me, what is your RC approach today? How is it that you solve an RC passage? So type in your answers over here in the short answer poll. So just tell me, when you take a look at an RC passage, how is it that you approach it? Okay, I'm going to start reading a few as the answers are coming in. Skim and scan. Skim, summarize and answer. Make notes per paragraph. Don't read the passage again. Keep the main points in mind. Okay. Read and try to make short summary. Outline each paragraph quickly, looking for themes. All right. Read the question first and then read the passage. Okay. Read slowly. Okay, I saw slowly in caps. You must be an e-GMAT student. All right. Thank you. That helps. Now I'm going to ask one more question about your approach, which is that today when you read an RC passage, what level of understanding do you get from the passage before you start reviewing the answer choice, before you start reading the question and the answer choices? So what is the level of understanding that you have today from the passage before you start looking at the questions and the answers? Okay, so today most of you have less than 50% understanding of the passage before you start looking at the question. Okay, good. Now tell me, how many times do you refer back to the passage when you are solving the questions? So you read a question, you read an answer choice. How many times on an average for a 4-question RC passage do you go back to the passage? Is it 2 times? Is it 5 times? How many times? Just tell me a number. Okay. Twice, 4 times, depends on the passage. Absolutely. Again, this is just an average number. 3 to 4 times. Okay. So I see 3 to 4 times as a more average number of times that you go back to the passage. All right, sounds good. Now tell me, after you have solved the passage, I'm going to bring back the level of understanding here. After you are done solving the passage and before you click on that next button to move to the next question, what is the level of understanding that you have? First of all, tell me, is your level of understanding enhanced by going back and forth to the passage? Is your level of understanding enhanced? Okay. What is your renewed level of understanding of the passage? Okay, so it is between 75 and 90%. Okay, most of you get to that level. Okay, so essentially, if I understood how you are approaching how you're approaching RC today, what it appears to me is that you first read the passage. So okay, so let me ask another question. How much time do you spend on reading the passage, the first read of the passage, before you start looking at the questions? The first read of the passage, less than 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes. Okay. All right. And how long do you take to solve each question? One and a half minutes to 2 minutes. Okay. All right. Okay. There are a few of you who solve it in less than a minute. Okay. But 1 to 2 minutes is what, 1.5 to 2 minutes is what a number of you are saying. All right, good. Now, what we're going to do in this session is, first of all, thank you very much for telling me all this, and I'm going to compile all this information in a note while I'm asking you, while you're solving the question, so that we have all your responses here for your before this webinar approach towards RC. Now, what we're going to do in this webinar is, my goal is to help you ace reading comprehension, right? So for that, I'm going to do 3 things. First of all, I'm going to tell you how is it that you should get the maximum from the passage, okay? Now, the strategy that you're going to learn in this webinar is very different from the strategy that you are applying today, okay? And I'm going to demonstrate that strategy to you. So be patient, keep an open mind. Okay, because whatever I'm going to tell you right now it's absolutely different from what you're doing in practice today. What you're doing is you are reading the passage quickly. You're not getting that, you're getting less than 50% of understanding from the passage. What I'm going to tell here is that when you read the passage the first time, your goal should be to get 90 to 100% understanding of the passage before you even start looking at the questions. Okay, and I'm going to prove that strategy to you. Okay, so that's what I'm going to teach today. Okay, how do you get maximum from the passage? I'm going to introduce these reading strategies. I'm going to demonstrate these strategies through 2 small passages. Then I'm going to tell you how is it that you utilize that information to answer questions. Okay, and I'm going to demonstrate a main point question and an inference question. And after you get after you're aware of these reading strategies and the application of these strategies, I'm going to show you how to apply these strategies on GMAT RC passage, and I'm going to take an official passage in which I'm going to apply the reading strategies, I'm going to apply the question strategies, and you're going to see how more than 90% understanding of the passage helps with solving the questions, even the difficult of the questions, consistently, accurately. Okay, that's what we're going to do, and in the end, I'm going to provide you with a study plan for reading comprehension. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So if you're here, that means you are not doing well in RC, or maybe some of you just want that confirmation that yes, you are headed on the right path. But my request to you is keep an open mind. These strategies have worked have worked for several students, for thousands of students. They've been successful, and I'm going to share those success stories with you as well. But I want you to keep an open mind to these strategies so that you can absorb them, okay? And you can be on the path to getting to that 90 percentile ability in RC. Is that something that you all can do? You all can keep an open mind about it? And I'm going to address all your concerns with regards to timing. I know that's a big concern with regards to how is it that you can get to that level to read to get the maximum from the passage. Don't worry, I have all that covered here. Okay. All right, good. So the first and the foremost thing that you need to do in order to even get started with applying the reading strategies is you need to change your attitude towards reading comprehension. And I'm going to ask you a few questions, and because you must be wondering, how is it that I know what your attitude is, and how do I know that you need to change the attitude? So let me first ask those questions. How many of you enjoy doing reading comprehension today? How many of you see that RC passage and you see, oh wow, I have an RC passage on the screen. I'm interested in reading what the author has said. I want to answer questions. Yes. Not many of you. Very few people enjoy reading comprehension. And that is something which, and why is it that you don't enjoy reading comprehension? Because the topics are not something which we are very interested in, right? Yes, there may be some topics that that are of our interest, but then if the topic doesn't come from the genre that we are interested in, it seems like a drag, because again, it's a lot of content that we have to consume. And I understand it is logical not to enjoy reading comprehension. I absolutely understand. But that is the attitude that I want you to change. Okay, I want you to feel that as whenever you see a passage on the screen, I want you to give it your everything on that you have to that passage. I want you to have that mental impression in your mind that, okay, this is the passage that has the potential to get me 4 questions correct on reading on my GMAT. Okay, 4 questions are very, very important. Okay, these 4 questions will get me closer to that 730 plus target score, or whatever it is that your target score is. If you think about RC from that perspective, you will start to be more amenable to applying the reading strategies that we'll talk about. Okay, but first of all, you have to get that happy attitude towards RC. Okay, does this point make sense? Because if you are averse, if you have that feeling of aversion towards RC, then whatever I talk about is going to be a really uphill battle. But if you start to like RC, if you start to embrace RC, then then things are going to be much easier. Okay, so good. Now, another way to change your attitude towards RC is, and again, these are just certain things that I'm telling you. Some things may work for some people, some other things may work for some other people. So again, pick and choose whichever statement makes sense to you. One is that, I have this RC on screen. Let me give it my best, because this has the potential to get me 4 questions correct, which will get me closer to that 730 score. Okay, that's one way to think about it. Second way to think about RC is that the author has put in a lot of effort to write this passage. Let me give my 100% to this passage, so that I can understand what the author is saying, because it's my responsibility to understand what the author is saying. Okay. And again, this attitude is really good, because if you are reading something with the perspective, with the motive that you want to learn everything that the author has said, then you read it with a very different bent of mind. Okay, you are a lot more open to what the author is saying. Does this make sense? That if the author has spent so much effort in creating this passage, let me give it my best to learn what the author is saying, to see what the author is saying. Good. So the first and the foremost thing is you need to change your attitude, and for that you need to get immersed in the passage. Okay. Only if you're immersed in the passage will you be able to get to that 90% or higher comprehension of the passage. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, how do you get immersed? This comes with practice. This is you are changing the way you are thinking about RC. There are a couple of things that I've mentioned to you. These things have we have this common theme in the RC course, in which every time you see the passage, this is the first thing that we tell you. This is the first thing that we tell you to get immersed in the passage. And how is it that you get immersed in the passage? Okay, so we train you to do that. Now, the second thing is, once you are immersed in the passage, now we talk about the reading strategies. And there are 3 key reading strategies that we talk about. And these strategies are actually pretty similar to one another. They're just applied on different lengths of the passage. And I'll tell you, on different parts of the passage. And let me tell you what these are. The first thing is that you need to understand the sentence structure of the sentence. Now, if you think about it, a typical RC passage contains, let's say, 1 or more paragraphs. A typical paragraph contains 1 or more sentences, and these sentences are not your short sentences. These are pretty dense sentences. So if you don't read the RC sentence, if you read a typical reading comprehension sentence in one go, then you are a lot likely to miss out on a lot of good information in the sentence. So that's why what we say is that you need to read each sentence slowly. You need to break down the sentence into its sentence structure, and you need to understand each and every idea presented in the sentence. And for that, you need to apply the methodology of strategic pausing. Okay, so we teach all of that, so don't worry about it, but you need to, the strategies that you're seeing on the screen are things that you need to start doing. Now, how is it that you learn those strategies is what we teach you in the course. Okay, so, and I'm going to demonstrate these things to you today. Then the second thing that you need to do is you need to predict the thoughts of the author through keywords. Now, what do I mean by that? By that, what I mean is that, let's say the author has presented a positive aspect about a certain entity, okay? And then he says, having said that. Now, you don't read the stuff that comes after having said that, but you do a mental pause and you think about, okay, I've read about the positive things about this entity. Now the author is saying, having said that. So what am I going to read next? So tell me, what are you going to read next? The negative aspects? Absolutely. He's going to present the negative aspects, right? So now that you know, you already have a mental impression in your mind that what you're going to read is negative aspects, your mind is primed to read and understand what the author says next. And now you absorb that information a lot better, a lot more effectively. So you need to pause at these keywords so that you can understand what the author is going to say next, so that that information gets really very well absorbed in your mind. Does this make sense? Yes or no? Okay, good. So this is a second reading strategy. Okay, again, you need to pause. To understand the sentence structure, you need to pause. To predict the thoughts through keywords, you need to pause. And I'm talking about a number of pauses here, and all of that comes together with the high levels reading strategy that we have, which I'm going to tell you towards the end. Okay. The last reading strategy is that you need to summarize. Okay. Now, summarize. When do you summarize? Now, these RC passages are fairly dense, right? And all of us have a certain capacity to keep information in our mind, right? And as soon as you feel that the information is now overflowing, you just pause at that time and you take down notes, okay? You write down in your own words whatever you have read, right? That is what summarizing is. Okay, and these summaries, as you are reading the passage, really help you come up with the overall summary of the paragraph and overall summary of the passage. Okay, but it's very important for you to pause and to write in your own words whenever you feel that there is that overload of information. Okay, and your mind is going to tell you when you are going to experience that overload of information. For some of you, it may come after a single sentence. For some of you, it may come after 3 sentences. For some of you, it may come after an entire paragraph. It all depends upon the kind of topic that you are reading. It all depends upon your comfort level of that topic and the comfort level of the language in that particular passage, right? So there is no right or wrong here. There is no specific thing as to, okay, you should summarize only after you read this much content. No, it all varies from person to person. In fact, a person can be more in fact, it also varies for an individual depending upon the type of passage that he or she is reading. Okay, but the key thing over here is the idea is that you need to pause, write down the stuff in your own words whenever you feel that overload of information. That is very, very important. Okay, so you do see predict the thoughts in both of these strategies. One is over here, predict the thoughts through keywords, and the other is predict what's next. And one of you asked me the question when I was talking about this prediction, that what if the passage is not going in the same tone as we pre-think? Now that is not going to happen with the keywords. If you're predicting through the keywords, whatever you predict should be what the author is saying, because each keyword has only one purpose. If you're using because, if because has been used as a keyword, then that means there is a cause, an effect, right? If therefore has been used as a keyword, that means there is a result. If however has been used, that means there is a contrast, right? So over here, your thoughts should match exactly what the keyword indicates. However, for predicting what's next when you are summarizing, this is where you're absolutely right that you may not go, your thought process may not match what the author is saying. And that's why I don't pay that much attention to this prediction. What this prediction does is, the prediction in step number 3 is that you, in strategy number 3 is that it just keeps you engaged with the passage. Think about it as if you're in active conversation with the author. That's what this prediction does, right? But you're absolutely right, this may not be along the lines of what the author is saying, and which is absolutely fine. Okay, think about this prediction to be just one of the ways for you to remain immersed in the passage. Okay, all right. So if you think about it, all of these strategies, as I said earlier while introducing these strategies, are applied on different levels of an RC passage. The first one is applied on the sentence level. The second one is applied within the paragraph whenever you see a keyword. The third one is applicable within a paragraph as well as among paragraphs, depending upon when is it that you start to experience that overload of information. Okay. Now, the key thing that puts all of these strategies together, think about it this way. We are pausing while we are reading the sentence. We are pausing while when we see a keyword and we are predicting what comes next. We are pausing when we have an information overload and we are summarizing it in our own words. So, pauses means that you need to, in order for you to apply these strategies effectively, you need to read slowly. Okay? This is the key thing for all of the strategies that we are working. This is the theme of this webinar, to read slowly. Only if you read slowly can you improve your comprehension. Is this something that you understand? I know this is the one thing which is absolutely against the strategy that all of you or most of you are applying today. I understand that. Okay? But the key, and I understand that you have timing concerns, and as I said, I'm going to address that. But for now, till I'm in the demonstration mode, just make a note of this, write this down in your scratch pad. You need to apply these strategies slowly. Okay? And one thing that I do want you to keep in mind is, if these strategies were not successful, I wouldn't be sitting here telling you to apply these strategies slowly. Okay? These are successful. That is the reason why I am here telling you about these strategies. Okay? All right. Now let's talk about, I'm going to have you apply whatever method it is that you're comfortable with on this small passage. I'm going to give you a minute to solve this small passage, okay? And then I'm going to give you one question on this, okay? So let's get going with that. And what I want to do is, can all of you click on no over here? This means that you haven't as yet read the passage. That way I know how many people are actively engaged in the passage. All right, sounds good. Now, I do have one request. When you're done reading the passage, click on yes over here, reading and understanding to the level that you want to read and understand. Okay, I am going to start a timer for 1 minute at my end. But I will also see if a number of you have not as yet read, I may give you more time to read the passage, or I may just give you the question. I'll decide depending upon how many of you are still reading the passage. All right, sounds good. So 108 people here, good. And I'm also going to give you a note pane in which you can enter your notes. Okay, so just feel free to enter whatever notes you want to enter. You may enter them after you are done reading the passage. That's absolutely fine. It's optional. You don't need to enter here. Okay, all right, so here you go. Here's the passage. All right, 1 minute is up. I'm going to give you the question as well. Here's the question, and I'm going to give you the question part. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. All right, I'm going to broadcast the results. The correct answer here is choice D, and 52% of the class got this question correct. So let me ask you this question here. I'm going to bring back the level of understanding of the passage here. Tell me the level of understanding of this passage after you read the passage. Okay. Good. So according to your assessment, most of you felt that your understanding was more than 75%. Very few people had complete understanding. Okay, good. Now, tell me, how many times did you have to go back to the passage when you were reading the answer, when you were solving the question? There was only one question over here, so how many times did you go back to the passage? Twice. And what were you looking for in the passage? Tell me briefly, what is it that you were looking for in the passage? 3 times, once, 0, very few people who didn't have to go back. So now tell me, what is it that you were looking for in the passage? The tone of the author, if there is a viewpoint, fact or author opinion, main idea, matching words, okay, if there is a view or not, okay, if it involved any evaluation or hierarchy, okay. So very, very good, okay. I want you to keep in mind the stuff that a number of you were going back to the passage to verify, okay? Because we are going to see how is it that you can make sure that you get all of this information while you're reading the passage the first time, okay? This is the idea that I want you to understand, okay? So good. Thank you for being so expressive here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how is it that I read a passage whenever I see any passage, okay? And I'll show you what kind of notes I take, and I'll walk you through that process, okay? So let me do one thing. Let me see if I can write down over here. So bear with me for just a couple of minutes here, a couple of seconds, not minutes. All right. All right. So I'm going to read this now. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism. Okay, so I'm going to pause here because there is some information over here which I want to absorb, and I concentrate my attention on this bordering on the extreme. What does this mean, and what is its function? Bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC, and I'm going to ask you this question. What does bordering on the extreme modify, or what is it talking about? Is it talking about EC, and I'm going to shorten EC, ethnocentrism as EC, or is it talking about the definition of EC? Absolutely, it talks about the definition of EC. And what does it say? It says that this definition of EC is exaggerated. This is exaggerated. That's what he says. Okay, that's what the author says, right? Okay, so I know that, okay, whatever he's going to talk about next is actually exaggerated. And whose opinion is this? Whose opinion is that the definition is exaggerated? It is the author's opinion. Absolutely. We do know that this is the author's opinion because it's the author who's saying bordering on the extreme, right? He's not saying according to some, this definition is exaggerated. He himself is saying bordering on the extreme, this definition of ethnocentrism, right? Blah, blah, blah. All right, good. So it's author's impression. All right, now let's read. One definition of EC considers what? EC, right? So I'm applying my reading, my sentence correction strategies here. Considers EC a schematic in-group, out-group differentiation, and I see a comma here, so I pause here. Okay, now what is schematic? I actually don't know what schematic is, but that's okay. Yes, I don't know that, but I'm just going to follow along. It's okay. Some kind of, okay, in-group, out-group differentiation. I'm going to absorb this. What does in-group, out-group differentiation means? It means that there is some difference between people in the group and people outside the group. There is some difference between them. Okay, so what is that difference? I don't know. That's what we are going to talk about. Okay, in which now the author is explaining what this differentiation is, in which internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in-group. Okay, oh, these are pretty heavy words, but can you summarize these words for me? See, now when I'm reading this part, I know that the author is explaining that difference between the in-group and the out-group. So I already know that, right? Now he's talking about these heavy words to the in-group. Now what are these? These can be summarized as positive emotions or love towards the in-group, okay, or love towards the in-group, okay, are correlated, are linked with a state of hostility, with negative or with hatred towards outgroups, okay, which are often perceived, now which, it's talking about outgroups, which are often perceived as subhuman and or the incorporation of evil, which are often considered as evil. So outgroups are considered evil. Okay, so really what the author is saying is, this entire paragraph I have summarized over here in this in this in these notes. The definition is exaggerated. Definition of EC. What is the definition? What is this exaggerated definition? The people inside the group. Love for people inside the group is linked with hatred or negative emotions for people outside the group. By the way, outside the group people are considered evil. Okay? Any doubts here? Good. So, now essentially if you think about it, at a very high level, the author presents one definition of EC. He indicates that this definition is a bit exaggerated, and according to the definition, these two things are correlated, right? Love for your own people is linked with hatred towards outside people. Okay? Now I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to get a poll here, and I want to know what all aspects were you not able to get when you read the passage here. So select the items you were not able to understand from the passage when you read the passage on your own. And if you understand all the aspects from the passage, then you can select none. That's absolutely fine. So essentially, those of you who said that their understanding was 100%, they should be clicking on none here. Okay, so good. So essentially, let's see. 64% of the class, more than 50% of the class, was not able to understand this part over here. Indicates that the definition is a bit exaggerated. Okay, then there were few who were not able to summarize. Okay, and again, people who weren't able to understand this, you didn't read the passage in the first place. And if you think about it, the first one presents one definition of EC. This is something which is explicitly given to you in the passage itself, one definition. Right? Then indicates that the definition is a bit exaggerated. This is an inference that you have to draw. Okay? And you must be thinking, okay, why do I need to draw an inference when I don't know if there is any question that's based on inference? Doesn't matter what questions you will get. Whenever you're reading the passage, you need to draw inferences. You need to understand everything that the author is saying. Okay, so this second part over here is an inference that you had to draw, and majority of you, more than 60% of the class, was not able to do that, which means that this is a skill that you need to build. Okay, and we can help you build that skill. Okay, the last one here, per the definition, these following things are correlated. This is really the skill of summarizing information. Okay, and about 25% of you were not able to do that. And we'll help you with that as well. Okay, this is all part of what is the level of understanding that you need to have in order to say that yes, you have that 100% understanding. Okay, and these are the things, these are the skills that you need to build. Okay, all right, any questions right now? And let me get this poll here. Now, one thing which I will say is that when I asked you why did you have to go back to the passage, majority of you, as I was scrolling through the responses, majority of you said that we needed to see whether the author has presented any view or not. Okay. Now, if you had, so you were looking for that information. Now, let me ask you this. The information that I extracted from the passage while inferring was the exact information that you were hunting for when you looked at the question. Is that right? When you came back to the passage, that was the information that you were looking for, right? Now, how many of you were able to get that information? Not many, because the answer that you selected was only half of the class was able to get to that answer. And I'm not even sure if they got to that answer for the right reasons. We are going to talk about that. Okay. But this is all we are trying to say. We are saying you need all that information to answer the question. So why not get all that information up front instead of you coming back to the passage and scrambling to find that information. So all we are talking about is redistribution of time, and I'm going to explain that to you after I have demonstrated these strategies to you, because I do know that some of you are asking me questions about, wouldn't this take time? How can we apply these strategies? I have a full-blown slide for that. I know these questions are very obvious, so I will respond to that. Okay, but right now just keep an open mind and just focus on the accuracy that you can get if you get to this level of understanding of the passage. Okay, can we all do that? While we are solving questions, let's just focus on solving questions. When we come to strategies and how to learn those strategies, how those strategies apply in the test, we will just talk about that. Okay? All right. Good. So now let's come to the questions. Now, if you think about it, because I have already understood all that information from the passage, when I come to the answer choices, my analysis is going to be a lot more streamlined because I already have information. To criticize a concept that encourages hostility, when we were reading the passage, was there any mention of criticism? When I summarized the passage, those 3 items that I saw, was there any criticism there? Not at all. Right? So I don't even need to go back to the passage to confirm whether there is any criticism or not. Now, yes, there were some negative words in the passage, but those words don't go towards criticizing EC in the first place. Yes, the author says that the definition is exaggerated, but he's not saying that EC is exaggerated, right? So that's another thing which you have to understand. What is exaggerated? Right? So choice A is rejected. Let's look at choice B, and quite a few of you selected choice B as the correct answer, about 22 of you. To evaluate the concept of ethnocentrism while enlisting its various features. Now tell me, for those of you who selected choice B, did you look at various features and you saw, okay, there were those 5 things: internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, devotion. These must be the features that this answer choice is talking about. So let me select this answer. Look at that. 66% of those who selected, 70% of those who selected choice C selected it because of that reason. Now, do you see why this is not correct? After you have that proper understanding of the passage, do you see why this interpretation is not correct? And this understanding happens only after you read the passage, only if you understand the passage well. Okay? Essentially, its features, what does this mean? It means that the author is talking about, according to this sentence, according to this choice, the author has presented various features of ethnocentrism. Now tell me, how many features do you see from the passage? There's only one definition that the author is talking about, right? Those 5, internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, the intent of that was to express what kind of emotion, was to basically talk about part of the definition, right? These were not features of EC, right? So this choice is not correct for this reason, as well as to evaluate the concept of ethnocentrism. What does evaluation mean? When you evaluate, what do you do? Comparing the pros and cons. Analyze. Absolutely. He's not doing any evaluation here. There is no pros, there is no positive or negative of EC. We're talking about positive and negative of EC. Now, why this choice was attractive to 18% of the class? Because there are these positive emotions and the negative emotions that the author has mentioned about, right? So you just saw positive and negative and you said, okay, I think that can pass as evaluating, but that's not correct, because these were not positive and negative parts or features of ethnocentrism. These were just part of the definition of ethnocentrism. That is what it was, the definition. So again, you have to understand the roles played by these individual entities in the passage in order to make sure that you don't fall in these traps. And this is a very interestingly put together answer choice which feeds on the fact that people will simply skim the passage, see the positive and negative, and then select the answer. Okay, now let's take a look at choice C. Choice C was selected by about quarter of the class. So, to define the concept of ethnocentrism which leads to hierarchy among social groups. Now tell me one thing. We saw these 3 key points from the passage, right? Now, if you were to define, I understand that the word definition exists in the passage, right? But if you were to define something, will you use an exaggerated definition to define something? If your purpose was to define, let's say, a concept, will you use only the exaggerated definition? Absolutely not. Okay, and that is why this choice is wrong. So there are certain questions which are certain main point answer choices in which you have to read and you have to kind of do that role play exercise, that if I were to define it, will I do it this way? And if the answer is no, then yes, that answer is not correct, right? So, and absolutely there is another thing wrong as well. There is no hierarchy among social groups that has been specified, okay? Or no hierarchy that ethnocentrism leads to. Okay, yes, there is that subhuman part which is there in the description of what the outgroup is, but that is simply part of the description of the outgroup. That's not something, that subhuman part is not as a result of ethnocentrism, right? So that's another thing. All right. Now let's come to choice D, which is the correct answer, to introduce the concept of ethnocentrism by presenting a view on it. And again, to confirm, now we have rejected all the 3 answer choices, right? But in order to confirm that choice D is indeed the correct answer choice, let me ask you this: if you were to introduce a topic, could you introduce that by presenting an exaggerated definition? Absolutely, you could, right? You could, because you're just introducing it. Now you can introduce with the more generally accepted definition, or you could introduce with an exaggerated definition. That's absolutely fine. Okay, by presenting a view on it. Okay, by presenting a view on it. Now this is something which is present from the statement, from the part of the statement bordering on the extreme, right? So that is something which we already understood while we were reading the passage. Okay. Now I have a question. So yes. So is this clear? Do you all see that if you understand the passage very well, answer choice analysis becomes very straightforward? Did I have to go back to the passage at all? Absolutely not. Because I had summarized the passage so well, I didn't really have to go back to the passage. And I want you to put this into perspective. I am going to address the timing part. I am going to address how is it that you can prepare. I'm repeating myself here. I will definitely address those concerns. But just tell me, how many of you would be comfortable getting to that level of understanding when you read the passage the first time, and then with that information going ahead and answering the questions? Will you not be more comfortable in that scenario versus the scenario that you are in today? What you do today is you get a gist of the passage, you understand, okay, these are the high level things that are there, and then you go into the questions, and then you get in that panic mode. Oh my God, now I need to look for this information. Then you go back to the passage. Will you not be more, in which process will you be more anxious? In the slow reading process or in the current process that you're applying today? Slow or current, tell me, in which process will you be more anxious? I'm talking about the anxiety. In the fast reading process, yes, in the current process. Thank you. Thank you for correcting yourself. So the process that we are talking about here is that you first finish reading the entire passage before you even read the question. Okay? Now, yes, a concern over here is, well, when reading slow and then also can't comprehend, that's a different thing. As I said, I am going to address the timing part. I am going to address the part about the fact that how will you learn this. Once you have learned the process, which process will be more comfortable is what I'm talking about. And it's really the slow reading process, okay? Because you have that level of confidence that you understand everything in the passage. Now you're taking that information that you have from the passage to now solve the questions. All right, so now let's move on to our next passage. Again, we'll follow the same drill. Click on no over here, which means that you haven't as yet finished reading the passage. And then I'm going to show you the passage. I'm going to give you about a minute or so to read the passage. All right. All right, I'm going to show you the question. So this is mark the information, mark what can be inferred. So there's just one inference here. All right, last few seconds. Please put in your answers. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. And here are the results. Okay, and I'm going to ask the same question. When you read this passage, what was your level of understanding of the passage? What was your level of understanding of the passage when you read the passage? Between 75 and 90. Okay. And I'm going to ask this question again. How many of you went back to the passage and what were you looking for? what were you looking for? When you say that you went back to the passage, tell me what were you looking for? For each option in the passage, reinforce the current, okay? Didn't go back once and looked for the tone, all right? Relationship between EC and XP, that's what you were looking for. Twice just to double check my answer. Okay. All right. Okay, sounds good. Let me ask you this question as well. And this is the level of confidence in the answer choice that you've selected. So just use the same poll here. What's your level of confidence in the choice that you've selected? Okay, so majority of you are absolutely confident about the choice that you've selected. Okay, good. Let me tell you the correct answer here. The correct answer here is choice E, which only about 20% of the class selected. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why choice E is correct and why choice B and A, which are B, which is a very popular choice, why is that incorrect? Okay, how many of you are shocked about the correct answer? Okay, that's okay, because there is a big learning over here which is going to be really very helpful for you. It's good to make mistakes at this stage so that you can learn from those mistakes and don't make those mistakes when you are taking the exam. Okay, all right, so let's go through this. We'll follow our same process, but before that I just want to understand from you this. So read the question on the screen here. The color blue is considered to have soothing effect on the moods of people. Okay, what can you infer from it? And I'm going to give you a question here. Question poll. What can you infer from this statement? Statement number 1 or statement number 2? What can you infer? And as you are giving your answers, also tell me why is it that you're selecting the choice that you're selecting. Especially if you're selecting statement number 1, what in the passage over here makes you select statement number 1? Tell me that. Defend your answer. The word considered. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, majority of you, 75% of the class selected choice 1, which is that some people regard color blue as soothing, and you are justifying it correctly here. It is considered, it is not a universal or holistic thing. Point number 2 over here is very absolute. Considered implies that not all people think this. Absolutely correct. Okay, so essentially whenever you say is considered, right, it's not a fact, it's simply an opinion that has been provided, and that opinion is of a set of people. Okay, good. Now tell me one more thing. If the author is saying the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on the moods of most people, then does the author think that color blue is soothing? Do you know what the author's belief about color blue is? No, we don't, because we don't know if the author agrees with this considered view or not. Okay, the author has not said anything. He's simply reporting it. Okay, good. So you all understand that. All right, so now let's go into our passage here. I'm going to read the passage the same way as I did earlier. Okay, ethnocentrism, so EC, and its canonical variants and its variants are deemed to be intimately connected with xenophobia, XP. Okay, and this is where the interesting thing is that the author is saying that these are deemed to be intimately connected. Now, is deemed same as considered? If I say deemed, can I simply replace that with considered? Absolutely. So what is this view? This view is of some people here. Okay, some people think that EC and XP are closely connected. Okay, then a complex attitude, system cum sentiment structure. Oh, these are pretty heavy words. A complex system. Okay, I can just shorten it up like that. involving aversion, dislike, and antagonism. This is really hatred, so negative feelings, hatred, and antagonism vis-a-vis the strange or the alien, towards the alien, and everything that the stranger or the alien represents. Okay, so basically, what is XP? This is the definition of XP, that it's hatred for others, for strangers. That's what this is. Okay. All right. That's the now what is this? This is the definition of XP. Do you all agree with that? That this part over here is the definition of XP. Okay, good. Then let's read further. Some socio-cultural anthropologists, some experts, even considered now XP and EC opposite sides of the same coin. I pause over here. Now, this is again view of some other experts. Okay, so some other view, expert view. Okay, expert view. Some sociocultural anthropologists even consider. Now tell me, what is the significance of even here? Why has the author said even? How is this word even linked to what we have read? It's a more extreme view, absolutely. Now, if you notice here, in the first paragraph, so in the first line, the author said that, okay, these two, there is this view that EC and XP are closely connected. Now he's saying that, okay, there are some people who think that, let's say group A thinks that, but there is this other group B that takes this connection even to another extreme, saying that XP and EC are opposite sides of the same coin. Now, what does opposite sides of the same coin mean in the context of this? What does opposite sides of the same coin mean? Essentially the same, equivalent, absolutely. Opposite sides of the same coin are always connected. If one is there, the other is always there. Right? So that's what he's saying, that okay, there is this one group that thinks that EC and XP are closely connected, but there is this other group that take this connection to an extreme wherein they say that these two are always coexist. Okay, that's what the author is saying here. But so there is a contrast here, but a few voices, so there is this other group C, have cautioned that this need not be the case. The other group C does not agree with this, with the coexistent part. Okay. Now tell me, do you all understand everything in the passage now? As I've gone through this, do you understand everything in the passage? Good. So at a very, and look at my notes. My notes are very, very crisp. They are very, short. So they're written in a short form here. I've put in the groups A, B, C, right, and what they are saying, right? And I'm focusing on very small words. I'm focusing on words such as even, right? And I'm trying to understand why has the author used the word even. Now, you may think that, okay, why do I worry about that? Again, if I'm trying to understand the context of these words while I'm reading the passage the first time, I'm already in that mode of understanding the passage. So I'm doing all of my understanding part up front, so that I don't have to worry about understanding the passage when I'm in the question solving mode. Because when I'm in a question solving mode, all I'm doing is, my goal is to find the correct answer, which I can do by rejecting the incorrect answer choices and then by justifying the correct answer. So at that time, I'm in a completely different mode. Okay, so the whole point of this process is that you do what you do when you're doing something, do it perfectly, so that you don't have to keep switching your brain from understanding mode to analyzing mode. Does this make sense? Good. All right, so now let's go to our, let me remove these, yeah. Just give me 1 second here. Okay. Things are moving around. Just give me 1 second here while I try to figure this out. All right. Okay, so again, the stuff in the text is the same as I wrote down. EC and its variants are considered closely connected to XP. XP is hatred for aliens. Some experts take this to an extreme. XP and EC coexist. That's what they say. But there are some experts who say that no, XP and EC do not coexist. Okay, so essentially in this passage, the author defines a new term. Some consider they are closely connected. Some experts think EC and XP coexist. Some experts think otherwise. Now, in all of the 4 things, okay, which one does the author believe in? There are 4 items over here. Defines XP. Some consider they are closely connected. Some experts think EC and XP coexist. Some other experts think otherwise. The author only agrees with number 1 here. Why is that? Because number 1 is the fact. And the author always believes in facts. Fact is a fact, right? The author is a logical person. He doesn't need to say sun rises in the east and I agree with that. He doesn't need to say that. Sun rises in the east means it is a fact, so he agrees with the fact, right? But when he says some consider they are closely connected, if he hasn't given his opinion on what he believes about this, that means you cannot infer that from the passage. Okay, so the correct inference is always from the point of view of the author. What does the author believe in? So whenever you see an inference question, you should always ask that question. What does the author believe in? Okay, correct inference cannot be something on which the author has not given any opinion, and the author agrees with the facts because he's a sensible person. So a fact from the passage is something that the author believes in. So that can be the correct inference. Okay, now based on this understanding, tell me what should be the correct answer. And let me go back to the question slide. Okay, tell me what should be the correct answer here based on, let me see if you want to revisit your answers, and I'll show you the question and I'll show you your responses there. Okay. Here. So these were your original responses. 44% of you selected choice B, 21% choice A, and you all know the correct answer now because I've already said what the correct answer is. But let's see how many of you now agree that choice E is the only one which can be inferred. Absolutely. Now tell me something. If you have this level of understanding of the passage, will you be confused about answer choices? If you have this level of understanding of the passage, you would not be. And again, I'm going to say this again. How you learn the process, that is something which I'm going to tell you. And believe me, it has worked for thousands of students. There is no reason why it's not going to work for you. Okay? Timing part, that is not a concern at all. Once you have mastered the process, you will actually take less time than your current process, than you take today with your current process. That's my guarantee. Okay? How you master the process, that is something that I will take care of. I'll give you the tools that you need to master this process. Okay? Okay, so let me just read a question. Is the fact the inference is always the author's opinion is a universal truth? I'm assuming that can be questioned on inferring an option of an expert from the passage, or does this refer to generic inference questions? Again, the whole point of this is that you have to, the inference part is when you are whenever you have a question, okay, how do you, what can be inferred, you always have to see what has the author given his opinion about, or what are the facts in the passage. Okay, and when we solve the official passage, there are two inference questions in that, so you will be able to understand the inference from that perspective as well. But this is at a very high level, this is the principle that you need to keep in mind, which means that when you are reading the passage, you need to understand what are author's views, what are facts, what are views that simply the author has presented, what are the views of other people that the author is simply presenting. Okay, or what are the people who are yeah. Okay, so now choice E. Almost all of you have selected choice E as the correct answer. Now, let's go through each and every choice once again. XP and EC are different facets of the same concept. Again, this is simply a view of only a few people over here. So this part over here has been interpreted as choice A. And again, that's just a view of some people. The canonical variants of EC are closely connected with xenophobia. Now this choice over here are closely connected. Again, this was simply a deemed view. This was not a view. This was just an impression of some people, not everyone. The author has not given his opinion whether he agrees with this deemed view or not, and that's why choice B is not correct. Okay. Let's see choice C. EC and XP are not connected with each other. Again, when you say that this need not be the case, this is simply a view of some experts. The author has not said anything about it. Okay. Choice D, there's no causal relationship. XP entails dislike towards the strange. This was the definition of XP over here, that it's the structure involving aversion, dislike, and everything that the stranger towards the alien. Choice E is correct because that's the fact, that's the definition that the author has presented, and the author agrees with that. Okay? All right. So what difficulty level would I put this question under? This is a 700 level question, definitely. Yeah. Okay. So I hope that now everyone understands why choice E is correct. Okay, how can we infer E? Isn't that a fact already given? Again, it doesn't matter whether it's, okay, so something which students get confused about, so thank you for asking that question, is that inference should not be stated in the passage. That is not the correct interpretation of what an inference is. Okay, I think people take that too far. Essentially, infer is that if something is given in the, what does the author believe in, right? And you have to get information from the passage itself. So essentially what this is, choice E is a restatement of what is given in the passage. Now, GMAT is not going to give you an answer choice that reproduces verbatim what the passage says. He's not going to say that XP is the sentiment structure involving aversion, dislike, antagonism vis-a-vis strange or the alien. That is not something that he's going to do, right? So again, the restatements from the information in the passage, that is what is the inference in choice E. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to our next question, which is an official passage. Okay. It's from OG, and let me just make sure how I don't, again, this is from official guide. The first two were e-GMAT passages. Now tell me how many of you have seen this passage? Fraser and Mosteller. Okay, so none of you have seen this passage. Very good. Good. Now, again, I'm using an official passage to show you how the reading strategies work on not just the content that we have in our course, but also on official passages. Okay, because I don't want you to have that doubt that, okay, maybe you guys have created questions on your own, you know, to make sure that the strategies work on them. So I want to rest those issues. I want to, you know, put those issues to rest, and that's why I have the official passage here, so that you can see what kind of questions you are going to see as difficult questions, and how is it that these reading strategies will help you solve those questions. Okay, so are you guys ready for a full-length passage now? There are 5 questions in this. Are you all ready for it? Okay, How many of you are attempting to apply the reading strategies? Good. Let's get a pulse of everyone here. Actually, give me your feedback on the webinar till now. Tell me, what is it that what has been an aha moment? What do you think about it so far? Okay. Reading slowly. Good. Very nice. Reading strategy. Okay. Good. Very nice. Imagine the amount of learning that you've had from these two small passages. Imagine the amount of learning that you can have from the content that has been built like this. Okay, from purpose-built content that is there in the reading comprehension course, which you can get access to if you decide to invest in this in your GMAT. Okay, so again, you have to put all of this into context and understand what is important for you to get to that 90 percentile ability in reading comprehension, to get to that 730 plus score so that you can get to that ROI that you've been eyeing for. Okay. All right, so let's get into our question number, this passage. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to also give you this passage to download. If you want to increase the font, this is a PDF, so simply download that. And I'm going to start the timer. I'm going to give you 4 minutes to read this passage. Okay. So go ahead, read it, and after 4 minutes, I'm going to start showing you questions. Alright, I'm going to start showing you the questions now. I'm going to give you about a minute to solve each question. Here you go. Oh, sorry, I didn't show you the question. There you go. Alright, I'm going to end the poll now. And here comes your next question. Alright, I'm going to end this poll. And here comes your next question. Alright, I'm going to end this poll. And here is your last question. All right, I'm going to end this poll now. Okay, so let me also now, I'm going to share the results with you of each of these questions, but first tell me, how do you feel after solving this official passage? First of all, let me ask you the comprehension question, the level of comprehension that you had after you read the passage. What was the level of understanding of passage that you had after you read the passage? Okay, so good. All right, so most of you are above 75. Okay. All right. Now tell me, how many of you were able to or attempted to apply the reading strategies that we've talked about? Reading slowly. I gave you 4 minutes to read the passage. How many of you were able to do that? Okay, good. Did that have an impact on your level of understanding? Okay, good. It did have an impact. Now, you're saying that this passage was easier to understand. Well, this is not that complicated a passage, but there is a lot of stuff going on in this passage. Okay, and if you were able to apply the strategies, then you will feel that that this was an easy to understand passage. Okay, the questions were tricky. Absolutely, the questions in this passage were tricky, and that's what happens. Sometimes the passage is more tricky and the questions are straightforward, or the language of questions is straightforward. Sometimes the passage appear to be easy, but there is something going on with the passage which you need to focus, which you need to make sure that you understand. But the questions are really complicated, wherein you have to spend the effort to understand the question. Okay. All right, so I'm going to broadcast the results for each question one by one, and I'm going to tell you what the correct answer is, and you guys have done well, decently well, I would say. So let's begin with question 5, because that's what we see on our screen. Question 5 was indeed the most difficult one. The correct answer over here is choice A, which about 30% of you got correct. Okay. So choice A is the correct answer here. Let me go to question number 4. And I want you all to make a note of what all questions you got correct. So because I'm going to ask that question to you. Choice D is the correct answer for question number 4. D, illustrate a point about the value of enrolling a wide range of patients in clinical trials. 75% of you got the question correct. Good. Then let's go to question number 3 and question 3, the correct answer is question 3. Choice C, 68% of the question, 69% of the class got the question correct. So it would limit the number of variables researchers would need to consider when evaluating treatment under study. Let's go to question number 2 now. Question 2, choice A is the correct answer. About 52% of the class got this question correct, 52%. And then let's come to question number 1. Question 1, choice D is the correct answer, and 61% of the class got this question correct. And here are your results. Okay. All right, so question 1 is D, and let's go ahead. Now let me ask this question. How many of the questions did you answer correct? And let me open a poll here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, so tell me. Okay, so majority of you, so the largest segment of the class, 54% of the class got either 3 or 4 questions correct. Okay, all right. So I know that the last question would have been missed. Now tell me, how many times did you have to go back to the passage while you were answering questions? Oh, I don't have a poll here, sorry. How many times did you have to go back to the passage? Didn't. Okay, 2 or 3 times once. So very few people had to go back. Okay, all right, good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the passage and I'm going to tell you what all information I extract from the passage, and then you can compare that to the information that you extracted from the passage. Okay, and again, it's important to understand what all information is possible to be extracted, because again, the author can make questions from any part of the passage, and it's much better for you to have that level of understanding while you are reading the passage, so that you don't have to come and analyze it from that perspective when you see a question. So instead of being reactive, you need to be proactive, and that's what this approach is all about. Okay, so let's get going with that. All right. Fraser and Mosteller, I'm going to shorten them up as F&M, okay, assert that medical research could be improved by a move towards larger, simpler clinical trials of medical treatments. Now, there are 2 things that come out over here. The first one is that he's saying that there is a scope of improvement in this medical research, and he's talking about move towards larger and simpler. Now tell me one thing, how many of you were able to get this thing that the author is talking about 2 things. One is moving towards larger, and second is moving towards simpler clinical trials. How many of you understood that part? Okay, good. So there are 2 things. Did any of you have confusion that, okay, how can larger and simpler, how can treatments, these trials can be both larger and simpler? Did you have any concerns about that? Okay, you did. Okay. All right, so that's good. So that you got that there is larger and simpler. Now, something that comes to mind is that when the author has kind of given the gist of the passage in the first line itself, because you know that what he's saying is that F&M are saying that medical research could be improved. He's talking about 2 possible ways of two goals that can be attained in order to improve the medical research, and that is that go towards larger clinical trials and simpler clinical trials. Okay, now let's read further. Currently, so the author is talking about what is being done currently. Researchers collect far more background information on patients than is strictly required for their trials, substantially more than hospitals collect. So now he presents the first thing that is wrong with the medical research, which is that they collect too much information. Okay, so this is a negative thing that he talks about, too much information. Okay, that's the one negative thing that he talks about. Okay, then thereby, and what is the impact of that? The impact of that is too much of information leads to increasing costs of data collection, storage, and analysis. So increasing costs of these 3 things, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so that's what we have. So in terms of my notes, what I have so far is that medical research can be improved, larger, simpler trials, and then currently too much data collected, it's more than hospital data, and that leads to increase in costs. Okay, now although limiting information, now when you see the word although, that means there is a change in direction now. Okay, now what has the author been saying so far? Now this is where our prediction comes into, our analysis of the keyword strategy comes into picture. That the author has been saying that, okay, collecting they collect far too much data. Okay, now what he's saying is that, okay, the author is now saying, okay, there could be a negative impact of limiting the amount of information. So let's read that. Although limiting information collection could increase the risk that researchers will overlook facts relevant to a study. So now he is presenting that, okay, yes, there are some people that, you know, it could increase the risk of overlooking facts, but then he says, Fraser and F&M contend, they say that such risk never entirely eliminable, that such risk is never really possible to eliminate such kind of risk regardless of the amount of data that you collect would still be small. So what he's saying is that this risk is still very small regardless of the amount of data that you collect, right? So he's presenting that, okay, there is some risk of losing some facts, but that risk is not really that much. Now read this last sentence here. Only in research on entirely new treatments are new, on entirely new statements are new and expected variables likely to arise. What is the significance of giving this part over here? What is the purpose of this last line? What is it an example for? Exception for what? It is that the risk is higher. Yes, so only for these medical trials that are done on new and that are done on entirely new treatments, the risk is going to be higher. Good. Now tell me something, that if the author has said that the risk would be small in most studies, focus on this part, and he is giving this example of new treatments, is there an inference that you can draw? Focus on this, most studies. And this example. Absolutely, new treatments, the trials for new treatments are few. Absolutely. This is correct. So that's an inference that we are drawing from the information that has been given to us, because he's saying that because Fraser and F&M are saying that the risk will be small in most studies, okay, and then they're also talking about these examples of where the risk is high. That means that according to them, these new treatments are not that many in number. The new treatments are significantly fewer in number. Absolutely. Okay. Now, how many of you drew that inference? I'm not saying that that inference was required to answer any of the questions, but I'm just asking how many of you drew that inference? Okay. How many of you understand that inference? Okay. Now, was it difficult to draw that inference? If you're focusing on it, it wasn't difficult, right? Because you have to understand why has the author, I mean, you will start to draw such inferences when you start to question, why did the author talk about this? In fact, when I read this passage, I had that same exact concern in my mind. Okay, the author has said that, okay, research that the risk will be small, and now he's talking about this example where the risk is going to be more. Why has the author given that example, right? So you have to question that. Okay, and when you start to question, the first step in getting to the analysis is that you question. And when you start to question, the answers will come to you. The problem right now is that you're not questioning enough. Okay, all right, so now let's go to our next so essentially in this paragraph, what the author is now tell me one more thing. In this paragraph, what is the author talk? There were two things that the author said earlier, right? Larger and simpler trials. Now he's talking about too much data is collected, which means that he is essentially saying that, okay, let's start collecting less let's start reducing the amount of data that we collect. Now, is that going towards larger trials, or is that going towards smaller, simpler trials? Simpler trials, absolutely. So in this paragraph, the author is talking about benefits of simpler trials. How many of you understood that part? That in this paragraph, the author is talking about simpler trials. Good. Good. And this is all about relating information. In the beginning, the author said larger and simpler. Now he's explaining, in this paragraph, he's explained the benefit of simpler trial. Okay. Now let's move next. Let's move to the next one. F&M propose not only that researchers limit data collection on individual patients, but also that researchers enroll more patients in clinical trials. Okay, let me pause here. Now, what is the author doing in this paragraph? In this paragraph, is he summarizing the previous paragraph as well? Yes, no? Is he summarizing the previous paragraph as well? In some way, right? He's talking about that not only he's kind of, in this passage, the author has kind of packaged stuff really very well. And again, typically you do see that kind of thing in official passages. You know, they are very well constructed. The thoughts really flow very, very logically. So over here, he's saying that, okay, that F&M proposed not only that researchers limit data collection, but also that researchers enroll more patients in the clinical trials. Now tell me, enroll more patients in the clinical trials, what is that going towards? This suggestion. What is now? He's coming towards the larger trials. Absolutely. Okay. He's coming towards the larger trials, right? He's talking about what can be done to get to the larger trials. And then he's giving an advantage of that, thereby obtaining a more representative sample of total population with the disease under study. So now he's saying that, okay, let's enroll more patients in the trial so that you can get a more representative sample. Okay. Now next, he's going to give you, next he's going to explain, okay, what is being done currently, right? So now let's read. Often researchers restrict study participation, he's talking about the current part, to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. Okay, so now he's basically giving what is being done currently. A treatment judged successful under these ideal conditions. Now, what ideal conditions are we talking about here? What conditions are ideal here? Restricted studies, absolutely. The ideal conditions are restricted studies where patients only have the ailment that is being studied. Absolutely. That is the ideal condition that he's talking about. Okay. And this can be then evaluated under normal conditions. Now, what are normal conditions? What are normal conditions? Unrestricted conditions where people have other ailments as well, because that is a more representative thing, right? So essentially, in the first slide over here, often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. Here the author is talking about what is being done currently. Okay, currently in the trials, patients are enrolled who only have a single ailment and no other ailments. Other than that particular ailment, they are absolutely fine. So currently what is done is, if the treatment is considered to be successful under these ideal conditions, and you all understand what these ideal conditions are, then in the next trial, they evaluate under normal conditions. And normal conditions means that when patients have more than one ailments, because that is what represents the more practical cases. Okay. All right. So now one thing that I want you to focus over here is, as I'm reading, I am associating information. I'm asking, what are these ideal conditions? What are these normal conditions? How do these link to what the author has said earlier? How many of you do that? Or how many of you did that when they read the passage? Good. Okay, not that many of you. Okay, but do you guys see that if you ask that question, the passage your understanding of the passage really enhances? Because a question can very well be constructed from this particular aspect. What does the author mean by ideal conditions? Right now, when you see that question, now you have to come back to the passage and see where ideal was. Now you have to read what came before, what came after, and then you have to kind of join the threads. Does that happen? So you need to avoid that from happening. You need to ask those questions up front when you are understanding the passage. Okay. All right. So again, proposal features collect less data. This is really a summary from the previous one. Increase the size of trial. And again, he's presenting the benefits of that. Currently, what is being done? Study include patients with only one disease. Ideal conditions. Treatments passing these ideal. Tested for normal conditions where the people have more than one ailments. Okay. So now in this paragraph, the author is explaining the benefits of the larger trial. Okay. Now let's read further. Broadening the range of trial participants. Now again over here he's summarizing the previous section here, because now he's saying that okay, if you go into the larger trials, phrase F&M suggests would enable researchers to evaluate a treatment's efficacy for diverse patients under various conditions and to evaluate its effectiveness for different patient groups. So here the author is now saying, giving benefit of the larger trial, that you will be, if you get to the broader range larger trials, then you can figure out the efficacy for patients under various conditions. Okay, why? Because you have more representative population in your trial. Okay, then he's giving examples over here. For example, treatment for progressive disease may vary according to patient stage of disease, patient's ages. Now these are more variables that he's talking about that can be taken care of if you have increased size of the trial. Okay, so those are just examples. Okay, so basically so over here, if you think about it, as we've already said, multiple trials, ideal and normal conditions as done currently may not be needed because the normal conditions themselves will be replicated by increasing the size of the trial. Right? Okay, so overall what we have over here is the F&M have presented proposal to improve medical research, simpler trial and larger trial. Simpler trial collect less data, okay, not too much risk, will reduce the cost, and then he's explained the current scenario. Larger trial, again, what is the proposal, what is the benefit for that, and then the current scenario has been explained. Okay. Now tell me, how many of you had this level of understanding of the passage? What were the aspects that you missed out on? You have the numbers listed out over here. Actually, let me do one thing. Let me create a poll and let's get more objective answers here. I'm going to write down the numbers over here. 1. Okay, sorry about that. 1 minute. 1 1 1 2 1 3 2 1 2 2 2 3. Tell me which ones were you not able to understand? When you read the passage on your own. Give me 1 second here, just changing. I'm getting a poll, sorry about that. Okay, so tell me, which ones were you not able to understand? Okay. So quite a few of you did not understand the risk part over here. This one over here. Cost part is good. Current scenario explained. This is another thing which you did not understand. So this part you didn't. This part you didn't. 2-1 is good. 2-2 no. And then 2-3 also no. Okay. Now do you understand all of this? Okay. Now tell me, what is it that I did while reading the passage that you didn't do that led to you not understanding these important parts from the passage? So think about it. Okay, go through the analysis that I've done and think about it and tell me what is it that you didn't do. Read in so much detail, breaking down things more, questioning, question why certain points are stated, asking questions, not just understand but relate the information given in different sentences. Good. Now let me ask you one more thing. How long have you been preparing for RC? More than 2 weeks? Yes or no? Okay. How many RC passages have you solved so far? Give me a number, 10, 20, more than 50. Too many to count. Okay. All right. Now tell me, have you ever seen, how many times have you seen a solution that is as detailed as this, which tells you what level of understanding you needed to have from the passage before you take a look at the questions? How many times have you seen such solutions? This is the first time. Okay. Let's get the yes no poll because I think our answers are getting jumbled up. How many times have you seen such a solution? Okay, never. All right. Now tell me, if you learn, if all the solutions that you see are to this level of detail, which these solutions that tell you how is it that you should be reading the passage, how is it, what information should you have gotten, would that not help you in learning the process? Tell me. Okay, so that's where you have your answer. It will definitely help you learning the process. You will be able to do that. What I'm doing, you practice 20 or 30 passages with proper solutions. What I'm doing, you will be able to do as well. And the level of confidence that you have when you read the passage on your own like this, and when you answer questions, that's going to have an impact, a positive impact, not only on the accuracy for difficult questions for RC, but also on accuracy of other questions, because you will be using your brain in mind in a very, very constructive manner. The anxiety will be a lot less. Do you see that? And again, I will address the timing aspect. Do not worry about that. Okay. All right, so let's go through the questions real quick. And because we have this level of understanding of the question of the passage, going through questions will be straightforward. Okay. So the first question is, the passage is primarily concerned with, which means we need to find the main point of the passage. So if you think about it, the first sentence itself says that, okay, there's proposal to improve medical research. Then the author talks about benefits of doing simpler trials. Then he talks about the benefits of larger trial, right? So essentially he's given two ways in which two proposals to improve medical research. Right now, let's take a look at the answer choices. So you have to do this analysis, this pre-thinking before you move on to reviewing the answer choices. How many of you do that today? How many of you pre-think the answer before you take a look at the answer choices? And that is something that you should change right away. Because what happens is, if you don't have in your mind what the correct answer should be or the idea behind the correct answer, then when you look at the answer choices, there is, I can say with 100% certainty that you are going to get confused because of the verbiage of the answer choices. You're falling in the trap of the test maker. Okay, all right, so let's go on. The passage is primarily concerned with, now we know that there's a two-pronged approach. Now when I'm taking to improve medical research, that's what the author is doing. Now when I take a look at the answer choices, identifying two practices that may affect the accuracy of clinical trials. Now, is there any talk about accuracy at all in the passage? Because now what we have to do is, now we have to find that one thing that is wrong with each incorrect answer choice and move forward. There is no accuracy being talked about, right? Two practices, identifying two practices that may affect the accuracy. No, there are two practices that are explained, but the idea is not. The idea is not to identify those. I mean, the idea is to talk about how those can be changed, right? So let's move forward. Describing aspects of medical research that tend to drive up costs. Yes, that is done, but in a very small part of the passage. That's not the entire gist of the passage. Okay, let me get a question over here as well. No one selected choice B, so that's good. Then let's talk about choice C. Evaluating an analysis of certain shortcomings of current medical research practices. Now over here, there is no pros and cons that the author is talking about of current medical research practices, right? He's talking about deficiencies of the current practice, and he's talking about how those deficiencies can be taken care of, but he's not talking about pros and cons of the current medical research practices. Okay, so that part is not correct. Now let's take a look at choice D. Describing proposed changes to the ways in which clinical trials are conducted. This goes exactly with what our pre-thinking was. This is the correct one. Explaining how medical researchers have traditionally conducted clinical trials. Yes, this is something that he does. But how such trials are likely to change? Again, he's just giving a proposal. Okay, this is again, there's the current. He's simply presenting one way of. He's simply presenting. He's not saying that how such trials are likely to change based on one current practice. Okay, so choice E is wrong over here. So the correct choice that encapsulates the essence of the entire passage is choice D. Okay, now if you pre-think, if you understand the passage the manner in which we did, and if you pre-think the answer, when you come to the question analysis, it becomes relatively straightforward. Okay, let's move forward. Question number 2, and let me get this, because I know we do have to get to the timing part of the test of RC. So I'm going to be sharing this presentation with you. It has all the detailed explanations, but let's go through this. Which of the following can be inferred from the passage about a study of the category of patients referred to in the lines, often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments. So now this part is talking about the studies in which only patients are selected who have no other ailments, right? So what can be inferred about that? So now you have to go back to your understanding of this part, okay? Essentially, when we understood this part, what we understood was that results of such study are very limiting. Why? Because they're only taking care of the ideal conditions, right? And not the normal conditions. So that is something which the author, which we were able to infer when we read the passage. So let's see if we find any other, let's see which choice encapsulates that. So choice A actually encapsulates that very well. The findings might have limited applicability. Okay. So here you have, when you understood the passage, because you were questioning why the author is saying this, why the author is saying that, you drew all the inferences, all the obvious inferences up front itself. That's why when you came to this question, you looked at choice A and you said, oh yeah, that's what is correct. And you already you actually pre-thought the answer as well. Okay, now let's go through each and every choice and make sure that we reject it on solid grounds. It would be prohibitively expensive in its attempt to create ideal conditions. Again, there is no talk about cost with regards to selecting only patients who have that ailment. So this choice is wrong. It would be the best way to sample the total population of patients. This is actually the opposite. It doesn't really sample. It's not representative of all the population. It would allow researchers to limit information collection without increasing the risk that important variables could be overlooked. Again, remember, data collection was not considered in the context of the larger trial. Data collection was talked about in the context of the simpler trial. So here the author is simply utilizing multiple bits of information from the passage and packaging it in an answer choice. Okay, so it's really a trap choice. It's finding, and a lot of you fell in that trap, about 20%, 1/5 of the class actually fell into that trap. Okay, now, but again, you wouldn't have fallen into that trap had you understood the passage to the level of clarity that we explained. Okay. Alright, its findings would be more accurate if it concerned treatments for a progressive disease than if it concerned treatments for a non-progressive disease. Again, we are not talking about the accuracy of the findings at all. What we were talking about is what would be the applicability of that particular study. Okay, so the accuracy is not being talked about. So that's why choice E is wrong. Okay, so tell me one thing. This was an inference question. Do you see how proper analysis and understanding of the passage helps with answer selection? Okay, because it's very important to understand that part right now so that you can understand the whole timing aspect of this process. Okay, typically if you would have solved this question without understanding the passage to the level that we understood when I explained the passage to you, how much time would you have spent on this question? And how confident would this question have caused an anxiety? It would have caused an anxiety, right? And that's the beauty of understanding the passage up front so well so that you don't get to that anxious mode when you're taking a look at the answer choices. Because to be honest, you know, when we are creating answer choices, especially for those difficult questions, the questions that you need to solve in order to get to that 90th percentile, in order to get to that 730 score, our goal is to create answer choices that confuse you. We are not your best friends at that time. We really want to make sure that we create those answer choices which are trap answer choices. But for a person who has mastered the reading strategies, who has mastered how to understand the passage completely upon the first read, for that person, those traps don't work. And that's the level that you need to get at. Okay. All right, let's go to question number 3. It can be inferred from the passage that a study limited to patients like those. So again, this is from the same sentence as question number 2. Which of the following advantages over the kind of study that FNM proposes? So now the question has flipped. Now the author is asking, what is the advantage of the current way of studying, that is including only those patients who have just that one ailment that is being tested, over the proposed way to increase the size of trial? So now you have to find the advantage. So now you think about, okay, what could be the advantage of that? Okay, now if you think about it, there are these ideal conditions, right? We said that, okay, by doing that, there's this ideal condition. Okay, so what is the benefit? You have to now read through the answer choices and see what the benefit could be. Okay, so you need to understand what the given way is. The current way is to limit the participants to the patients who only have that ailment, which is to replicate the ideal conditions, and the proposed way is to get more variety. Now you take a look at the answer choices to see, okay, what could be the correct answer here. Okay, and if you see choice number C, it would limit the number of variables researchers would need to consider when evaluating the treatment under study. So this is, you need to read the answer. There are some questions in which you need to read the answer choices to see what makes sense. Okay, and for those questions, you rely on eliminating the incorrect answer choices. It would yield more data and its findings would be more accurate. Again, there's nothing in the passage that talks about accuracy. It would cost less in the long term. There's nothing about the cost in the passage. Let's look at choice D. It would help researchers identify subgroups with secondary conditions. Again, these are ideal conditions. So secondary conditions is completely opposite. That's the advantage of the proposed method. It would enable researchers to assess the value of an experimental treatment for an average patient. Now, average patient is where things are wrong. Average patient is really a normal condition, not the ideal condition. So choice D is also wrong. Choice C, when you read the choice C, it would limit the number of variables. Obviously, if you have only one particular patient, one disease in all the patients, then obviously your number of variables are fewer. Then so this part is correct over here. Okay. All right, now let's see what the responses were for this question. Question number 3. I think you guys did decently well over here. 69% of the class got this question correct. Okay. Let's take a look at question number 4 now. The author mentions patients ages may also impact. Okay, so again we have to figure out why did he mention the thing about patients' ages. And again, if you think about it, it's because he's talking about replicating real life situations, right? So he's talking about how the proposed thing will help address the age, the variation in the ages, right? So now we take a look at the answer choices over here. Identify the most critical variable. Well, this is not the most critical variable. We know that for sure. Cast doubt on advisability. Absolutely wrong. This is actually going in favor of the FNM proposed approach. And let me get the responses here as well. So quite a few of you got this question correct. Then indicate why progressive diseases may require treatments at, again, that's a different example. Progressive diseases is same person being in same ailment but different stages in different people. This was a different example, right? Choice D, illustrate a point about value of enrolling. Absolutely correct. And then choice E is wrong, absolutely opposite. Okay, so again, this question all of you got correct. So a lot of you got correct, so good. Now, for people who fell in the trap of choice C, about 1/5 of the class, again, you got confused with 2 different examples. And again, clarity of what the author is saying is very, very important. So you fell into that trap. Okay. Let's take a look at question number 5. And for this question, the accuracy is the lowest. Choice A is the correct answer. So again, which of the following describes the result of the way in which researchers generally conduct clinical trials? Okay, so it's a pretty broad one. So how do researchers generally conduct trials? They collect a lot more data, therefore the costs are higher. They conduct only in ideal conditions, so application to real life is limited. Right, so it's a global passage question. So let's take a look at the answer choices now. So whenever you answer such a question, you always have to pre-think, okay, what do I know about the current process, right? So what do I know about that from the passage? So you summarize it in your own words. That's what we did over here. Now you take a look at the answer choices to see which answer choice fits the bill. They expend resources on storage of information likely to be irrelevant to the study they are conducting. This makes perfect sense, right? So this is what was talked about in the first paragraph. So this choice is correct. But before we accept this choice, we need to reject all the other answer choices. They sometimes compromise the accuracy. Again, there is no talk about accuracy whatsoever. So this choice is absolutely wrong. Okay, so for those of you who selected choice B, about 1/5 of the class, where did you see the accuracy in the passage? There is no mention of accuracy. Okay, they avoid the risk of overlooking variables that might affect their findings, even though doing so raises their research costs. Again, it's actually the opposite here. The risk exists, not opposite, but the risk exists even for the current way of doing studies, okay, because you can't say they avoid the risk, because the author is very clear that the risk is small. It exists, but the risk is small. Okay, so avoid the risk is absolutely wrong. So quite a few of you selected this choice. So I want you to make sure that you focus on each and every bit of information that is specified, and because you went back into the passage to evaluate this, at that time your radar was not really that strong. So as you are reading the passage, you need to understand that part. Okay, again, and you could have figured this out if you had related the information. Why is the author saying that? Why is he saying this? Right? So again, the author is writing the passage and creating the questions all in a synchronized fashion. That's why if you spend the time up front in reading the passage, your job is going to be a lot easier when you're evaluating the answer choices. Okay, so choice C is wrong. Let's take a look at choice D over here. Because they attempt to analyze too much information, they overlook facts that could emerge. Again, this is actually because they attempt to analyze too much, they overlook facts that could emerge as relevant to their studies. Again, that's not what the author is talking about in the passage at all. In order to approximate the conditions, again, nobody select, they base their methods on the methods used by hospital. No, that was just for the comparison's sake. Okay. So choice A is correct. Alright, so essentially the key thing over here is, as you read the passage, you need to understand the passage, you need to notice the linkages, and you need to draw inferences. Okay, and all of this is possible by making sure that you apply the reading strategy slowly. And it is going to be an effort for you to learn these reading strategies. And that is why you need to have the course that teaches you these reading strategies. Okay. So again, let's now come to the last section of this presentation, in which we are talking about how is it that you can now learn the method. Okay. First of all of you convinced about the method? Tell me about that first. Or if you're convinced that the method works, that if you have this level of understanding of the passage, then solving questions will be a lot more easy and you'll be a lot more accurate. Okay. So again, I just want to remind you the 3 reasons to keep that eye on the aim. Top B schools now require more or less a score of 730. You can get the majority of the scholarships that's awarded, that's given to students who score above 730, and the difference in the salary over a 10-year period by getting an MBA from a top B school versus a second-tier B school. Okay, it's really very stark. So you need that 30 points, that 700 to 730 difference can lead to $500,000 worth of ROI. Okay, so let's see how is it that you can get that ROI by aiming to get to that 90th percentile in reading comprehension. For that, you need to master the method of reading slowly, and you need to utilize data to power your success. Okay, so we've been talking about the method. I'm going to first talk about the method, the efficacy of the method, how you can learn the method, how the method has been successful, and then I'm going to talk about how is it that you need to utilize the data that is provided to you on the e-GMAT platform to make sure that you are headed in the right path and make sure that you get to the path in the most effective manner. Okay, let's talk about that. But let's first talk about the thing that has been bothering you since I used the word slowly up front in the session, that read slowly in a time test. And I know that you guys would be confused about that. You have expressed that to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first talk about what kind of speed, and again, initially when I asked you this question in the webinar, how much time do you take to read the passage, how much time do you take to answer the questions, you gave me this data. So essentially today you're spending, using your current method, you're spending about 8 minutes per passage. You spend about 2 to 3 minutes reading the passage, and then to answer a question you take anywhere from 1.5 to 2 minutes, right? So let's say on an average you get 4 questions. So essentially you're spending 8 minutes on the passage, but in terms of the time distribution, you're spending just quarter of that time on reading the passage initially. Okay, so that's the time distribution that you're doing today. Now, according to the slow initial reading method that I've been talking about in this session, what you need to do is you need to simply redistribute the time. Instead of spending 2 minutes on the passage, I want you to spend 3 minutes on a short passage. If you spend 3 minutes on a short passage, there is no reason why you would need to spend a minute more than a minute to solve each question. So essentially, you're taking 3 minutes to read the passage and 4 minutes to solve all the 4 questions. And this is also at a higher level, at a higher end of the time that you will take. Essentially, you'll end up taking fewer than 8 minutes to solve each passage. And the time distribution is as shown over here. You're taking almost about 50% of the time to read the passage initially, and then remaining 50% to solve the questions. Okay. Now, for some passages, you may need to spend 4 minutes to read the passage. That's absolutely fine. But the more time you spend upfront reading the passage, the less time you would need to answer the questions. That is the beauty of this process, and this is something which you have seen me demonstrate in this session. If you have that level of clarity upfront because you have read the passage upfront clearly, then there is no reason why you need to spend even a minute to solve the question that you see. Okay? So the idea over here is that you're reading for comprehension, not for time. The moment you start to read for comprehension, that's when you see a huge difference in how is it that you are approaching RC. Okay, how is it that you are approaching reading the passage for comprehension? Okay, that is the main thing. And as I said, if you comprehend the passage well enough, then you don't need to spend more than a minute to solve each question. In fact, students spend fewer than 30 seconds as well, 30 to 40 seconds to solve each question if they read the passage really well up front. Okay, let's take an example. Anastasia, she scored a V39. She improved from V31 to V39. On her third attempt, she used e-GMAT course, and this is verbatim from her debrief, and let me share the debrief over here. So these are the debriefs that I'm going to talk about, so just click on them and then you can browse through them. So I'm talking about Anastasia debrief right now. So if you read her debrief, you will be able to see that she says this verbatim. You should read all the text, not only the first and the last sentence of each paragraph or any other way. As long as you understand the whole paragraph, she means passage, it only takes 30 to 50 seconds to answer each question. The more you read, the greater is your skill. Okay. She read all the official passages, bought the subscription for economists, and she read each passage to understand, to analyze, understand why it's given. That's what we've been talking about. And read with what e-GMAT calls an SC hat. When we talk about breaking down the sentence, this is what we mean, that you need to understand each and every bit of the sentence that's given in the passage. Okay, so all of this is possible if you learned how to read properly. Okay, Nishant, he scored a 740. This is again verbatim from his. This is the debrief that you can browse to. What you have to realize is that you have enough time to cover all questions. I know many of you have this doubt, okay, but this is from a successful student, exceptionally successful student. Do not stress about timing at all. Take 3+ minutes to read, okay, a short passage, and 4 minutes to read a long passage. Okay, again, the goal is, he's not saying take 3 minutes or take 4 minutes. He's saying 3+, he's saying 4+, because he means that you need to read for comprehension. Okay, this strategy has an initial investment in time. That goes without saying. It has an initial investment in time, but is great when you deal with questions. That's exactly what you experienced today. Using this strategy, I was answering RC questions 45 to 60 seconds flat. Again, the same theme that Anastasia experienced, the same thing that you experienced in this session. Now this is his ESR, Nishant's ESR, and what you see over here is he took 2 minutes on an average to answer RC questions. What does that mean? Assuming 4 questions on an average, he spent 8 minutes per passage. So he reads slowly and he read for comprehension, he didn't spend any more time than what you're spending today utilizing your current method. Okay? Again, this is proof from his GMAT attempt of 740 score. Okay? So again, I want you to understand the slow reading of a passage for comprehension, okay, does not take any more time than your current method of speed reading. On the contrary, it improves your accuracy, okay, because you are able to answer questions correctly because of your enhanced comprehension, and it builds your confidence during the exam. Let's take a look at what Dr. Rohit said. Before learning and applying reading strategies, he scored a V27. Okay, and regarding to RC, he says, in case of reading comprehension, I was forced to read the passage multiple number of times for the reason I didn't understand the passage the first time around. That's what you guys also experience. But after learning and applying the reading strategies, when he scored V41, what he felt was that the need to read the passage repeatedly for RC and CR both significantly decreased. Okay. Now let's talk about how does a 90th percentile scorer prepare for RC. We've seen the impact of the process, right? You've seen that through the session, through the demonstration that I've done through 3 passages. You've seen that in the success stories that I've just shared with you. Now let's talk about how can you get there. Okay. The first thing that the 90th percentile does, the 90th percentile scorer does, is he builds his foundation skills. He understands how to read the sentence by strategically pausing. And that's taught in the Master Comprehension course of e-GMAT course. Okay, and this is the dashboard of Rohit. Okay, you see in this module we teach what are the building blocks of the sentence, how are long sentences formed, how can you utilize those principles to deconstruct those long sentences so that you can understand the meaning. Okay, these are short files, but look at the amount of time that he spent on these files. He's made sure that he's understood the content inside out. Okay, because this is the basic foundation skill of all GMAT verbal, not just RC, but it's very important for you to build this skill of strategically pausing. Knowing when to pause, that's very, very important. Okay, and that's something that you learn in the pause points files. We teach you what are all the points where you should pause. Okay, then we teach you how to apply that pause points understanding to strategically pause and understand the meaning of the sentence, right? So we teach you that process. Has anyone ever taught you how to read a sentence to understand its meaning? Be very honest. Have you been taught by anybody how to read a sentence to understand its meaning? No. That is something which is core to GMAT verbal. GMAT verbal is all about understanding reasoning. So if you don't know how to read a sentence to understand its meaning, how can you be expected to solve such dense RC passages? And that's the reason, because we focus on building those foundation skills, that is why students are successful. Students do so well in reading comprehension. Okay. Now, Rohit continued building his foundation skills. Now he came to Foundations block in Reading Comprehension course, in which he learned about the reading strategies. I have talked about reading strategies just for about, I would say, 15 to 20 minutes in this session. And then I started showing you how to apply those reading strategies. In these 2 concept files, you're going to learn the reading strategies in a lot more detail. Okay, and then you're going to practice those reading strategies on these 3 practice files, okay, in which you're going to see a passage and you're going to be questioned. Your thought process is going to be questioned so that you can train your mind to think about those things. Today, when I was asking you inferences, what inference can you draw from this? I was probing you to think, right? That same effect is going to be there when you go through these practice files over here. And that's what Rohit did. He spent, 21 minutes? He spent 20 minutes on these files, and he made sure that he understood this. And this is not even a full GMAT RC passage. This is a passage with no questions, with no GMAT style questions, but questions that are specifically created so that you learn how to think while you're reading a passage. You learn how to question when you're reading the passage. Do you think this is going to be a value add in your preparation? Okay, good. let's go through the next thing. The next thing that Rohit did was, once he learned how to apply those reading strategies, then he went through the question modules, and we have question modules for each and every type of question. The main point concept file. So again, we first teach you how do you address main point questions. Okay, then we teach you how, we then give you practice of that. Okay, so only main point questions. So we give you enough practice. Now, look at the amount of time. These are probably 10 to 15 minute, maximum 15 minute long files. But look at how much time he spent on this file. 36 minutes. Right? He made sure that he learned everything that he needed to learn from that file. Okay, and students who are aiming for that perfection do that. They basically make sure that they're learning everything properly, so that they don't have those gaps in their conceptual understanding towards the end. Okay. Now, these two files were shared with you as part of your preparation material. So tell me, how many of you spent more than 30 minutes on main point concept file? Okay. So again, the reason why I'm probing into this is that you need to learn, you need to look at the content from the standpoint of gaining everything that you need to gain from it. Okay, don't go through the content just for the sake of going through the content. And that's what successful students do. They make sure that they gain maximum from it. They make sure they spend time on where they need to spend time. Right? I mean, it is not that he's overdoing everything. Look at this. He's going through the concepts really well. He's spending half an hour on these 15-minute long files, but when it comes to practice, he's just breezing through them. He's making sure that he's getting the score. Look at the number of feedback points that he's getting. I'm pretty sure when he answered this, the inference concept 1, he must have done this file 2 times. The first time he wouldn't have scored well, and that's what would have told him to go through this file again. And he's taking that feedback in his stride to make sure that he improves. Now, once he did all the concept files of the main question types, then he comes to module number 6, in which he does, so there are 4 modules in which he goes through all the main question types. Then he comes to the application file. Okay, and here in each application file, there is one passage which contains 5 to 8 questions. Okay, each passage has detailed solution, even more detailed than what I utilized in this webinar today. Okay, each question has detailed explanation of how do you pre-think, why is the incorrect answer choice incorrect, and why is the correct answer correct. Okay, now look at the amount of time that he spent, an hour, half an hour. This is just on one passage. How many of you, when you've solved one passage, when you solve a passage, how many of you spend more than half an hour on that particular passage, not including the time that you take to solve the passage? Not many of you. And again, people who are striving for that perfection, they make sure that they analyze their thought process with the recommended thought process and make sure that there are no gaps in the two. Okay, and you can do that if you have the right kind of content. If the material that you're referring to itself doesn't have all those details, all the details of how is it that you should be reading the passage, then no matter how many passages you practice, you can practice 50 passages, 100 passages, your improvement is not going to be substantial. You will not be able to, it's very difficult for you to improve to that 90th percentile level. Okay, we are making it easy for you. We are giving things on a platter to you, so that we're giving you the right things, because we know that these are the things that you require. It's just that you have to put in the effort. Okay, and good students do that. Students who score that 730 plus, they do put in the right level of effort. I'm not saying that everyone who comes to e-GMAT is successful, but I do know that people who are not successful, they are not utilizing the course very well. And I will share an article with you that you should definitely read after you're done with this session. And I'm going to, so definitely download look at this article, these two articles here, so that you see what successful students do, how successful students prepare versus how people who don't succeed prepare. utilizing the same course. Okay, again, your success is in your hands. Alright, now next thing that Rohit did was he cemented his methods utilizing Scholaranium, and because he had prepared so very well in the stage 1 of his preparation, stage 1 where he was learning the concepts and methods, when he came to Scholaranium, he had pretty high accuracy. Okay, he practiced easy questions, medium questions, hard questions, and he had a very high accuracy of over 90%. Okay. Now look at the time that he spent. Again, same thing that you saw with Nishant's ESR, right? Nishant scored a 760 and 740, I believe, V41, and his ESR showed that he spent on an average 2 minutes per question. The same thing you can see Rohit didn't get his ESR, so let's rely on his Scholaranium attempts. Look at how much time he's spending, approximately 2 minutes per question, which means approximately 8 minutes per passage, and he read slowly, he read for comprehension. So again, proving that you do not take any more time than your current time, than the current time that you're taking with your speed reading process. So successful students focus on learning methods so that they can consistently solve difficult questions correctly. Your goal is to solve those difficult questions correctly. Okay, only then you can correctly, consistently, only then you can reach that 90th percentile. Okay, your goal is to, so that's for that you need to focus on learning the methods, and you need to utilize the data to guide you where to put in the effort. Do you need to reread the main point concept file? Did you not understand the inference concepts? The data is going to tell you, okay, because every concept file has a quiz associated with it. Okay, the data is going to tell you where should you be focusing. Okay, in the application file, if you didn't get the right score, then the data is going to tell you that, and that's going to be an indication that you need to revise the solution one more time so that you can get to the right score. Okay, so utilize data to your advantage so that you can put in your precious time in the right direction so that you can get to your goal of 730 score. Okay, and this is what I'm talking about, the article that I've shared with you over here, how successful students leverage data. Okay, the example over here that you see is for SC course, but again, the same thing you've seen dashboard of Rohit. You get similar feedback in all the courses in e-GMAT. Okay, but you look at the number of feedback points that you get. You look at the number of corrective action needed feedback points that these successful students got. This is Rohit's story over here. This is Nishant's story. Okay. All right. So I leave you all with this slide over here, and definitely take a look at all of this here. But let me just get some inputs from you now. I know this was a long session, and thank you for sticking with me for this long, but tell me, what's your learning from this session? You can put in over here, and also I would like to get your rating for the session. Now, how many of you are at that point wherein you feel that you are stuck with your score and you don't know really how to improve? How many of you are at that point? Okay, do one thing. For people who feel that they are stuck with their score and they don't know how to improve, I want you to write down your email address, and I'm not going to broadcast these results so that these email addresses are with me. Tell me your target GMAT test date, your target GMAT score, your current score, and one thing that worries you about GMAT. Okay, and we again write all of that in the same response over there. So split it with a dash over here, and then we'll see how we can help you. One of my GMAT strategy consultants will get back to you. Okay, and also tell me the current preparation material that you're using right now. Okay. All right. So, do you guys have any questions for me? I guess not. I think you guys have been tired. We've been at it for almost 3 hours now. So I will give you a couple of minutes to put in your addresses, to put in your information here, and also put in the current courses that you're using so that we know whether you are an e-GMAT student or not. Okay, so definitely give us that information. All right then, so with that, again, just a couple of more minutes here, a couple of more minutes, and then I'm going to end the session. And oh, the session PDF, let me give that as well. Here's the session PDF for you. All right, I'm going to end this meeting. It was wonderful conducting this webinar for you. Thank you very much, and we will get back to you. For those of you who put in their email addresses here, we will get back to you shortly. Give us about tomorrow is Sunday, so maybe by Monday we should be able to get back to you. All right, so thank you very much and good luck. Bye-bye.